Alberta's Minister of the Environment made a trip to Ottawa today to express her government's concerns over Bill C-69, currently before the Senate. Its proper name is the Impact Assessment Act, and it would set new rules for how future energy projects will be reviewed before they're approved, including a faster process, but with greater reach to examine a wide range of environmental and social factors before a project could be green-lighted. And some provinces argue that reach includes stepping into their jurisdiction. Shannon Phillips joins me now. So Alberta has concerns about Bill C-69, obviously. Let's start by why you came to Ottawa and who you had a chance to meet today.
Sure. Well, we share the view that Alberta, or that Canada, needs impact assessment legislation that gets good projects built, that keeps us out of the courts, and that keeps Canada working, moving forward in a way that has, in a process that has the confidence of Canadians. So we share that view with the federal government, and in fact, we're a province that has first-hand experience with when those processes fall down. And those, we argue, are bad for Albertans and they're bad for Canadians when we don't have that trust. So that piece is...
so you agree there needs to be a better assessment process?
We have no quarrel with the fact that we need to strengthen that process.
But this isn't it.
We haven't quite hit the mark yet. Right. And so we need some clarity on a few things. We need some clarity on what the project list is, that is to say, which big projects are in, which ones are out. We need to make sure that we've got clarity around timelines. We think that it has come some way to improving the 2012 timelines, but there's more work to be done there. Our suggestion is a hard stop at 300 days. Certainly industry has some concerns with this as well. There's a number of different proposals floating around out there.
Your timeline is 300 days, you mean like so from...
To decision.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
And that's part of it's often been the biggest complaint, right? Is that and notwithstanding concerns about the process sometimes, but it's the time. It goes on and on.
That's right.
And companies need certainty.
That's right.
Governments
need certainty as well. I mean, many of these projects involve a tremendous amount of Crown royalty back to us, a tremendous amount of economic benefits to First Nations when there's impact benefit agreements in place, other community benefit agreements in place. So everyone needs certainty. And it's not just about energy. It's about, more broadly, what kinds of projects we are using to build this country, whether it's LNG, whether it's new electricity transmission lines, rail projects, all of that gets captured by this.
So today you met with senators. Did you meet with senators from all, as you know, there's the Senate's changing, so there are different groups in the Senate. Did you meet with all the different groups or just people who oppose the project?
No, it was a broad cross-section. So, of course, there are a number of different points of view within the independent senators group. I met with them, and there were a number of people in that room, I'd say around 40. And I also met with the Liberal leader. I met with the Conservative caucus, and so a broad range of views. I think it is almost universally appreciated that the bill, as it stands right now, when it came out of the House of Commons, doesn't quite meet its objectives. And so we are calling on the federal government to take immediate action, whether that's publishing draft regulations. We are also calling on the Senate to bring forward a number of amendments, which there's a certain enthusiasm for to do. And we're calling on the feds to provide that clarity with publication of the project list right away here.
Okay, so I mean, as you're familiar with, the legislative process would be this. So it's made its way through the House of Commons, this bill. It's now before the Senate. You want senators to make amendments that answer Alberta's concerns. Some senators may choose to do that, and if the House rejects them, then what are you asking senators to do? Are you asking them to vote down this bill?
I think that we're not there yet. I think that the federal government is increasingly appreciative of the urgency of getting this right, and that it's possible that simply subsuming some of our main concerns to the regulation is not an appropriate way to solve this problem. And I think that they, too, understand that greater clarity will only promote investor confidence. So I actually think that we are in a place where we are moving this along with the Senate putting forward credible, reasonable amendments. I think that we are in a place where we will get to a better piece of legislation.
And what gives you that feeling? I mean, have you had meetings with federal officials, with the Liberal government that say, look, Minister Phillips, if the Senate proposes these kinds of changes, we're inclined to look positively on them?
We have had some of those conversations. Having said that, I don't know if the federal government quite appreciates the urgency to acting on this matter, which is why I'm here today, to underline that this is of crucial importance, not just to Albertans, but to all Canadians, and that we cannot afford to get this wrong. This is too important to get this wrong. And I think there's an increasing appreciation of that, but I want more than that. I want more than an appreciation. I want either amendments, publication of draft regulation, publication of that project list. I want specific deliverables. Bland assurances from the federal government are not enough in this case.
Specifically, what are, you've touched on them, but what are the two or three big things that you think need to be answered, need to be changed in this legislation that will give you what you want? Certainty around what specifically?
Timelines,
yeah.
Certainty around the project list, certainty around the role that Alberta's Climate Leadership Plan plays within strategic assessments. So this new impact assessment legislation.
And that's a big one for Alberta, right? I mean,
it is.
You think you're doing lots of stuff that you're not being given credit for.
Well, we are doing a lot of things, and it depends on which rooms you're in with respect to how much credit we're being given for it. But the fact of the matter is that if a regional strategic assessment around greenhouse gas emissions is proposed, then it ought to take into account as part, or at that strategic assessment ought to be Alberta's Climate Leadership Plan. It is the most comprehensive policy response to climate change in this country, and ought to be understood as such. We also think that this has the danger of being duplicative, and the broader assessment factors also have the danger of veering into provincial jurisdiction. So there's a couple of other pieces.
Yeah, there are some projects you say the federal government has no business.
That's right.
Being involved in. Tell me about that. I mean,
sure. Well, in situ oil sands. So in situ is well regulated under provincial jurisdiction because its actual economic effects are within provincial jurisdiction, with the exception of greenhouse gas emissions, which we acknowledge is a shared jurisdiction with the federal government, and that's where Alberta's Climate Leadership Plan, because it is a robust response to the question of climate change. That's why in situ should be exempted from this process, as should intra-provincial pipelines, because they are already covered by provincial processes.
Okay, let me ask you about something else. We'll see what you get from the Senate on this. But so the Prime Minister rolled out the carbon, on unwilling provinces. Let's put it that way. Reluctant provinces. It's going to rebate money, apparently more money than people will actually spend in extra energy costs. They'll get back more than that from the federal government. And I guess my question for you is, what are you thinking as you watch this unfold as a province with a plan, and you're watching the reluctant provinces and the way this is unfolding now with kind of a patchwork of approaches across the country and willingness to participate or not? What do you think is happening?
Well, from our perspective, we're just thankful after yesterday's news that we got to work on this right away 3 years ago, because what we have in place is a Made in Alberta plan that is specific to our economy and to how our economy is broadening and diversifying over time. So we've got better supports than what was proposed yesterday for small business, for the oil and gas industry, for clean technology, in renewables, for bioenergy, for farmers to undertake efficiency and renewable upgrades, for cities and towns, for nonprofits, for churches. Those are the kinds of initiatives that we have undertaken as a province, and it's tailored to what works in our province. I think it's unfortunate that other provinces haven't done the same. I'll give you an example. In the province of Saskatchewan, oil and gas operators won't have the 5-year exemption in place. We do. And we have that backstopped with new methane regulations, which we have come up with, which Saskatchewan still hasn't. So we have a federal government that is moving along with their own methane regulations. We got to work right away, making sure that ours would achieve reductions. And we also exempted our oil and gas primary production for 5 years to be able to take advantage of those methane policies and the offsets that are embedded within that. This is a very technical way of saying that we have specific challenges that our industry needs a policy response to. We have carefully calibrated that to make sure that we're getting reductions, yes, but we're also mindful of the economic reality. When you're making something from the Parliament Hill, you don't get that kind of flexibility, and that's what Saskatchewan is driving themselves into now.
Okay, lots to watch. Alberta Environment Minister Shannon Phillips, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.